All right, thought we'd go for a little walk this morning and talk about some ways that we're saving or offsetting our costs on many things these days. One of which is our feed costs for our animals, especially our rabbits and our chickens and our goats. And we've done some research over the winter. These winters are very long and cold, so you have time to study things and research things. And one thing that I came across was something that many homesteaders out there were using for their chickens. And I was thinking, well, why not use it for our rabbits? Now, this is what I have built and we are using for our rabbits. I'll move on to this side so that you can see them down here hopping around. There we go. They're just in there hanging out, doing their thing. Now, this rabbit tractor here, I built this just, I don't know, a month ago. And the purpose of this is to let our rabbits free range on the property without actually free ranging and going out into the bush. Mind you, though, we have had some instances where the rabbits have escaped, hence why we have this 6x6 here, because the wood that I used here was not completely flush on the bottom, and so depending on how you drag it on the ground, it might not stay level, so we put that down so that they cannot escape. And on the other side, I used their breeding box on the other side to block off any smaller holes. And all this was built out of random lumber on the property, the old used roof here that actually acts as the lid here so that I can access into the rabbits as well. And I got a rope on the other side that I attached just a piece of plastic that I can drag it around. And what we do, as you can see back here, we drag it across the ground multiple times a day to give the rabbits new fresh grass, and so that they can continue eating without us giving them any of the store-bought kibble. And what I do every evening or morning, I'll set the sprinkler out, which is right here, and let that run for about half an hour, soak the grass up, and then it'll start growing back up. If you can see in the furthest spot there, it's already growing back, and then you can see over the days. Now, that's one thing that we've done to offset the cost on the rabbits. But another thing that we do also is we have rhubarb that grows randomly on our property, and being that it's only the two of us, we can only eat so much food, and so the rhubarb just sits there. So many times in the morning I'll walk around and pick the rhubarb here and there, or Kimberly will come down to the garden with me and she will pick the rhubarb and come up here and give it to the rabbits. Another thing that we also do is any of the dead leaves from the vegetables as we're pruning them, any weeds that are just growing outside randomly, we can pick those and then give them to the rabbits, and they just mow them down. Now, with the dog food situation where they're starting to ration the food, right now we have enough meat for the two of us, and so the rabbits are strictly for the dogs. And being that the rabbits are eating food that we're not paying for right now, it's basically a free meal for the dogs for probably about a week, because we just had 16 rabbits, so that's 8 days, because we'll give a rabbit to each dog and per day, and that offsets our costs for 1 week. Now, it's not huge savings, but you know, it adds up in the long run. And with these rabbits, if anybody knows anything about rabbits, they only take 30 days to produce a new batch. So we'll let these ones go for a little bit and probably about 2 months, and then we'll off them to the dogs. Or if they escape and Roxy and Tank decide that they want rabbit and they see the rabbit, they'll go after the rabbit. Now, the second thing that we're doing, well, I guess I'd be on the third thing now, because it was the rabbits that we're saving money on, the dog food that we're kind of saving money on, and now I'd like to talk about the chicken feed. Last year when we had the egg layers, we kept them contained in behind the chicken coop where they weren't really able to, like, they were outside, but it was only like maybe 20 by 10 foot area. Not very big, and they couldn't really like scrounge around. It wasn't a lot of grass growing there. And so when the spring thaw started coming out, we had our paths out and we, like, where we would walk. And the chicken coop was getting pretty ripe, but at the same time I couldn't shovel it because it was still frozen. So I would let the chickens out and they would walk on our shoveled paths, but they couldn't go beyond that. And so, like, into the forest. And so they would just hang around the property. And as it thawed out, they would get a little bit further and further away. And eventually we just let them go. And now this year, we're just letting them scrounge around anywhere that they want. The rooster's probably kicking around somewhere too with his ladies or his hens. But this is something, like these two here, they're sitting here. They've been out since 5 o'clock this morning, and they're rummaging through some goat manure that I have to still scrape up and take to our compost area. But what we're doing now with our chickens is we're taking away their layer feed for about 13 to 14 hours a day and then giving it to them in the evening, and then that's all they get. The rest of the day they're out here scratching up the ground, picking up bugs. The mosquitoes are still not out yet. The bugs are still not in full swing yet. So they're getting whatever they can. And then what we also do is when Kimberly's in the kitchen cooking food, whatever she's cooking, we have a little compost bucket. And so what we do with that compost bucket are eggshells, our peels for cucumbers, any onions, anything that you use in your kitchen, we toss in the compost bin, and then we'll take it to the other side of the new garden that I just built and put that in the compost area, and the chickens will hear her banging on the tub and they'll flock over to her and just eat all that up, and that's their own food source too. And I'm telling you, if you know anyone who lets their eggs free range, what you need to do is get one of their eggs, because the color of the yolk that you get from a store-bought egg is yellow. And I've learned this from a little shit when I was roaming around on the farm, that a chicken egg's yolk is supposed to be orange. And I don't have an egg in my pocket right now to show you, but this whole year we've seen a drastic change in our chickens' energy levels, their attitudes, and their egg laying productions. We're getting sometimes 14, 15 eggs a day, and this is their second year that they've been laying. Now, the next thing that we are doing to offset the feed costs on our goats now per se is something we did last year, but we're kind of keeping them to certain areas. And now that's another thing, is we're not buying hay. We got William here who is in full rut, being a big prick, but he's here tethered to a tree and he's free ranging, and he's got his ladies in the back here. So there's Mama, and then June there too. Mama's pregnant. She should be popping any day soon. And well, popping, I would say in a week or so. Oh, here's our rooster. So to give you a good example of free range, that's what we call free range chickens. You know, when you see on the egg carton in a store saying free range, that they don't do this with their chickens. Their free range is in a contained area, if that. A lot of the organic stuff that they feed chickens is not free organic. I watched a documentary, I believe it was called Food Inc., and they talk about the free range eggs and how the factory farms do it. What they do is their free range is they're opening the door to the chicken coop, allowing the chicken to see daylight and calling it free range. Our free range is right here. They're roaming, they're scratching up everything that they see out there, worms, bugs, beetles, you name it. Sometimes they'll follow the goats around and just peck them too, and the goats love it. They all live with their own ecosystem. So Mama's here just eating up the weeds, cleaning everything up. As you can see back here, all the lower branches of all our trees here are eaten up, so it helps with feeding the goats. It helps with also looking at seeing the chickens. If the goats didn't clean all that up, I would not be able to see the chickens. The chickens would not be able to get in and out as easily, and they would not be able to spot predators as easy either. So that's kind of one, like, if you look at that, you can do what we have here on a smaller portion. But make sure you don't have William around, because this is what you're gonna get. He's peeing all over himself. He's banging trees. He's dragging me around sometimes, tangling himself up. If you follow us on Instagram, you probably saw that he tangled himself up royally the one morning, and he actually had his foot hung up on himself. And if you don't follow us on Instagram, you should, because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff on there and things that I can't post on this platform. But hopefully you got some good information, some good nuggets out of this video, things that you can implement into your own little ecosystems, and so that you can be independent of the things that are to come. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you on the next one.